my name is Jack Wallen, and I am here once again to impart some of whatever wisdom I have onto you. Now, this happens to be the video that I was going to record 2 weeks in a row, but each week this one got kind of bumped for something more important. That's not to say that this is not important. It's just that the other two videos had more to do with just being a human and an artist, and you get it. You get the idea. Now, but before I actually get into this, I want to say that this might, at first blush, seem like it only applies to writing, but truly, I believe that art transcends. And I think most of the things that you learn when doing art can be applied to being human. Everything I've learned about humanity, I learned from the theater. You get the idea. The idea behind this, the question that I would pose to you, is what color is your prose? Now, if you were hanging around writing circles about 10 or so years ago, you probably heard a phrase bandied about quite often. And in fact, the phrase was bandied about in such a way that it was like garlic to a vampire. The phrase was purple prose. How did you react to that? Did you go, "Oh, Dracula"? Or did you go, "What's he talking about?" Let me explain. Roughly 10 years ago, purple prose was looked upon as the bane of existence for writers. Now, as for myself, I looked at purple prose as something that was definitely a tool to have in the toolbox. You should also understand that I am definitely a rule breaker. Oh yes, I'll break them all. I once wrote a short story with no punctuation and no capital letters. Yeah, I love breaking rules. Breaking rules is fun. But the thing is, you have to understand the rules before you break them. Because if you just break them willy-nilly, there's really no purpose to it. I tend to break rules for a reason. When I break a rule, it is serving a purpose for me. And the same thing holds true with the color of my prose. Let me explain before I continue on. I have sort of devised this ladder of colors. It's not a color wheel. It's because it's only 5 colors, and each color kind of represents a certain florid level of your prose. Let me explain. I'll try to explain this because this is all off the top of my head, so I have to. Bear with me here, people. Bear with me. So I've coded these levels of prose, these 5 levels of prose with a color. The first color is white. Here's an example. It was a chair. Straightforward, simple. You get it. The next color is yellow. It was a wingback chair. A little more descriptive, helpful. Once you say it was a wingback chair, the reader can actually picture the chair in their head. It's very generic, but they can see it. Next level of prose is pink. And it goes something like this. It was a wingback chair with burgundy stitching. Now we're getting somewhere. Not only can the reader imagine a wingback chair, but if you add the burgundy stitching, they're starting to get an idea of what kind of chair this is. The next color, 4th color, is blue. And it goes something like this. It was a wingback chair with burgundy stitching that had been in the family for generations. Aha. Now you're picturing a wingback chair with burgundy stitching that's kind of old. You can see it. I know you can see it. It's in your head. You've seen this wingback chair. You've either seen it in real life, or you've seen it in pictures, or you've seen it in movies. You know it. And now we're getting into the realm of purple prose. Let me see if I can give you an example of purple prose. It was a wingback chair with burgundy stitching that had been in the family for generations. One leg was shorter than the other three, but it was propped up with a piece of paper folded in numerous folds that happened to contain a recipe for a decadent chocolate cake that everybody thought was lost. And that cake had wooed the tongues of men and women over the centuries or decades or whatever. You see what I'm talking about. This purple prose can tend to run on and on and on and on and on. And that was the complaint about 10 years ago, that when people were using purple prose, they were spending way too much time on descriptions of inanimate objects, like a chair. And there were examples of writers that were spending paragraphs and paragraphs and even pages describing a chair. And the way people looked at that was, does that move the narrative forward? And most often their answer was no. But like I said, I'm a rule breaker. And I firmly believe that purple prose has its place in literature, or scripts, or even the stories that you tell. You know those people that are just, they're wonderful at telling stories. And they can paint a picture like nobody else. And sometimes you might think that their stories, they might latch on to one aspect of a story and drone on and on and on about that. But think about this. Are they doing that for a reason? Are we talking about this chair? Are we going on paragraph after paragraph after paragraph about this chair for a reason? Does this chair play a significant part of our story? And if so, should we allow the prose to go all the way up to that 5th level? Or would it be better served at the 4th level? How much detail do you need to give to that chair so that it serves your story the best? And that's why I've always, ever since I first heard the phrase purple prose, it kind of raised the hackles on the back of my neck. And I thought, nay. We can do this. We need to have this color in our palette. Because if we don't, what happens when that chair is of utmost importance to our story or the characters or the world of the book that we're writing? You can't just write off purple prose and say that it is not good, period. You can't use it. Well, to me, that removes a color from our palette as an artist. And unless you're painting, metaphorically painting in black and white, you need all the colors you can get. And I will very often, if you read one of my books, you will find every level of color, all 5 levels of color in my books. I go from white when it's just a chair, to yellow, to pink, to blue, to purple. I'll use them all because they serve a purpose. And we need that. We need all of those colors to paint a full and rich picture. Because that's what we're doing. We're painting pictures for the reader. But, and this is also important, we don't want to paint the picture such that the reader doesn't get a chance to augment it in their minds. If you give the reader every single detail of the chair, they don't get to make it unique to them. It's the same thing with their characters. If you describe each of your characters in such minute detail that the reader doesn't get a chance to fill in some of the blanks, you're cheating them. You're cheating their imagination. Because every reader, when they're reading a book that you write, they want to be able to fill in those blanks and create the characters that they see in your books, not the characters that you force upon them. Now, of course, there are some details that you have to fill in for the readers, but you don't have to fill in every one of them. Give the reader a chance to connect the dots. Use every color of prose that you can. Because when you do that, you're creating dimension in your story and you're writing more effectively. If it's just a chair, it's just a chair. But if that chair is very special, then prop up that one leg with the recipe of the chocolate cake that has been thought missing. But if you do that, and this is very important, if you do that, you cannot ignore that recipe. You've got to, at some point, come back to it. Because if you ignore it, you're giving useless details just to fill up the page. But if you come back to that, it is a thing of beauty. So now that you understand how the colors of prose work, it's up to you to decide which ones you'll use, or if you'll use them all, and when you'll use them. And when you do this, your prose, your characters, and your stories will come alive. And there we go. What color is your prose? Mine is a veritable rainbow. Thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging out with me. I hope that you've learned something. I hope that I have entertained you for a moment or enlightened you, whatever. And if you feel like you know somebody that might benefit from this, please share it with them. And if you're just coming around to my little home here on YouTube, please subscribe. I'm not trying to make any money, just trying to help people, because that's my modus operandi, is helping. Sharing my knowledge with you, and hopefully doing so in a kind way. Thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful and colorful